Hello, this is Ilya Nikolaev with Brain XL, and in this video, I wanted to see if I can try to reframe what neurofeedback actually does. On the one hand, we can say that neurofeedback trains your brain how to perform better. Okay, now what that means is there's certain frequency bands that your brain is always emitting. Different parts of the brain emit different frequencies during different times of the day or during different tasks. We can apply electrodes to the scalp that read this electrical activity of the brain. And then we can hook it up through a software program and through a digital amplifier so that when you watch a game like this or like a driving car, it is able to track exactly what your brain is doing in real time at that point. And then as soon as your brain reaches a certain frequency, a certain performance metric, this instantaneously translates to the game working better. So the plane continues to fly through the green loops, or the car continues to go fast or not run into walls, for example. And when your brain sees this through your eyes, it interprets this as a reward because this is something that is supposed to happen and it's something that it would want to recreate. And so your brain, by syncing up what it does and by syncing up the rewards of the game, your brain eventually starts to reproduce those actions that got it rewards in the past. Now, that's just the technical side of what neurofeedback can do, but I wanted to address the overall global picture of the implications of neurofeedback. The future of medicine is actually more individualized medicine. It is more evidence-based medicine. And if you think about the performance of a brain, we're not just talking about the performance of your liver or your pancreas, not to diminish those. But when we're talking about the performance of the brain, what that is synonymous with is the performance of your cognitive, your mental, and your psycho-emotional life. So then the question becomes, how important is your cognitive, mental, and psycho-emotional life? And the answer to that can't be anything but it's of the most importance. It's of the most consequence, because what your mind is able to do or able to not do really starts to dictate the direction that you can take with your life, right? If somebody isn't able to pay attention in the classroom well enough, what's that going to do? That's going to dictate the future of their education. And then depending on where their education goes or does not go, or what they accomplish, that's going to dictate the rest of their life. Yeah? And it's the same way in relationships between people, right? When you have emotional balance, most of our emotional balance, most of our stress management also comes from the brain, right? The brain learns certain strategies according to our past experience, and then it implements those strategies going forward into future relationships. So if what our brain has learned in the past was a dysfunctional way of relating to people, then it's going to perpetuate that into the future until something changes it. And neurofeedback is exactly that thing that will change the brain into a new function. So what we're talking about here with neurofeedback is staggering when you think about the entire field of performance training, of biohacking, and even of medicine. Because so much of what goes right in our life happens because our brain happens to be working well. And so much of what goes wrong in our life also happens because our brain isn't able to do something well enough or healthfully enough. So remember this about neurofeedback. It's not just about fixing something that's wrong. This is not the way to look at it. But it's about strengthening your weaknesses and maybe even re-strengthening your strength as it is. Because who could really say that they can't use a better working brain, right? The organ that sits between our two ears is the thing that we owe the majority of our life to and the majority of our quality of life to. if you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have ADHD, if you have seizures, if you have migraines, etc., 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 this all can be reduced and shown to be a dysfunction of the brain. So if your life is bogged down by having anxiety or depression or migraines or seizures, then what can you imagine will happen once we free your brain up of that? What is going to be possible for your life once it's liberated from that? When we're talking about human potential, we're really talking about the potential of your mind. And when we're talking about the potential of your mind, we're really talking about the potential of your brain. Your ability to write well, your ability to read well, your ability to do math, your ability to work at your job better, your ability to hold down your family life, work life, academic life. All of it comes down to what your brain can or cannot do. So this is going to be the number one tool that we use to really drive our life forward, right? So in the search for our own potential, as most of us can agree is probably a good endeavor, in the search for our potential, where we'll all eventually end up is asking the question, what is our brain capable of? And when we find out that just because your brain is incapable of certain things, the accent there is that it's incapable of certain things now or yet. But it doesn't mean it's going to be incapable of those things forever. You can actually make your brain's potential increase, which means that you can enlarge the scope of your intelligence, you can enlarge the scope of your creativity, of your emotional salience. And so that's the gift, and that's the future and the promise of neurofeedback.